A millionaire falls into a coma, and his housekeeper finds his secret diary. Shocked by what she reads, she immediately calls the police. Welcome to the channel. Enjoy the video, give it a like, subscribe, turn on notifications, comment, and share. Emma Collins stood frozen in the doorway of her new home, a quaint brownstone nestled in the heart of Boston's historic Beacon Hill neighborhood. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across the worn hardwood floors, illuminating decades of history etched into every surface. At 42, Emma never imagined she'd be starting over. But here she was, a newly divorced single mother, holding the keys to a fresh start. "Mum, where do you want these boxes?" Sophia, Emma's 17-year-old daughter, called from behind a towering stack of cardboard. Emma snapped out of her daze. "Just leave them in the living room for now, honey. We'll sort through everything later." As Sophia disappeared into the house, Emma took a deep breath, inhaling the musty scent of old books and lemon-scented furniture polish. This house, with its creaky floorboards and drafty windows, represented more than just a new address. It was a second chance, a clean slate after the messy divorce from Michael, her husband of 20 years. The sound of a car door slamming outside caught Emma's attention. She turned to see her father, Thomas Bennett, slowly making his way up the front steps. At 68, Thomas still cut an impressive figure, but Emma couldn't help noticing the slight tremor in his hands as he gripped the railing. "Dad, you didn't have to come," Emma said, rushing to help him. "We could have managed the unpacking." Thomas waved her off with a chuckle. "And miss the chance to see my girls settle into their new castle? Not a chance." As they entered the house, Sophia emerged from the kitchen, her face flushed with excitement. "Grandpa, you won't believe what I found." In her hands she held an old leather-bound book, its pages yellowed with age. Emma's curiosity piqued. "What's that, sweetie?" "It was tucked away in one of the kitchen cabinets," Sophia explained, carefully opening the book. "I think it's some kind of diary." Emma gently took the book from her daughter, running her fingers over the faded inscription on the first page. "Property of Margaret Sinclair, 1952, she read aloud. Thomas peered over her shoulder, his brow furrowed. "Sinclair? That name sounds familiar." As Emma flipped through the pages, her eyes widened. The diary was filled with detailed accounts of life in Beacon Hill during the 1950s, but something about the entries seemed off. There were cryptic references to secret meetings, coded messages, and a mysterious figure known only as the benefactor. "This is intriguing," Emma murmured, her mind already racing with possibilities. Who was Margaret Sinclair, and what secrets had she been hiding in this very house? A knock at the door interrupted her thoughts. Emma opened it to find a tall, handsome man in his mid-40s standing on her porch, a welcoming smile on his face. "Hi there," he said, extending his hand. "I'm Jack Reynolds, your next-door neighbor. I thought I'd come by and introduce myself." Emma felt a flutter in her stomach as she shook his hand. "Emma Collins, it's nice to meet you, Jack." As they chatted, Emma couldn't help but notice the way Jack's eyes crinkled when he smiled, or how his deep voice seemed to resonate through her. It had been so long since she'd felt that spark of attraction, and it both thrilled and terrified her. Over the next few weeks, Emma threw herself into settling into their new life. She started her job as a high school English teacher. Sophia began classes at her new school, and slowly but surely, their house began to feel like home. But the diary remained at the back of Emma's mind, a constant source of intrigue. Late at night, after Sophia had gone to bed, Emma would pore over its pages, trying to decipher the cryptic entries. There were mentions of hidden rooms, secret passageways, and whispered conversations about vast sums of money. One evening, as Emma was grading papers at the kitchen table, Sophia burst through the front door, her face streaked with tears. "Sophia, what's wrong?" Emma asked, immediately on alert. Sophia collapsed into a chair, her body shaking with sobs. "I hate it here, Mom. I want to go back home." Emma's heart sank. She knew the move had been hard on Sophia, but she hadn't realized just how much her daughter was struggling. "Sweetie, talk to me. What happened?" Between hiccuping sobs, Sophia poured out her frustrations. She felt like an outsider at her new school. She missed her old friends, and the pressure of being a senior in a new environment was overwhelming. As Emma comforted her daughter, she couldn't help but feel a pang of guilt. Had she been so caught up in her own fresh start that she'd neglected to see Sophia's pain? Just then there was a knock at the door. Emma opened it to find Jack standing there, a concerned look on his face. "I heard crying," he said softly. "Is everything okay?" Emma hesitated for a moment before stepping aside to let him in. As Jack entered the kitchen and saw Sophia's tear-stained face, his expression softened. "Hey there," he said gently. "Rough day?" Sophia nodded, wiping her eyes. To Emma's surprise, Jack pulled up a chair and began talking to Sophia, sharing stories about his own high school experiences and the challenges of being the new kid. Before long, Sophia was laughing at Jack's self-deprecating humor, her earlier distress forgotten. As Emma watched the interaction, she felt a warmth spreading through her chest. There was something about Jack that put her at ease, made her feel like maybe, just maybe, everything would be okay. Later that night, after Jack had gone home and Sophia was asleep, Emma found herself drawn once again to Margaret Sinclair's diary. As she flipped through the pages, a small folded piece of paper fell out. With trembling hands, Emma unfolded it to find a hand-drawn map of what appeared to be the interior of a house. Their house. The map showed secret passages and hidden compartments that Emma had never known existed. But what caught her eye was a small X marked in one corner of the attic with the words, "The Benefactor's Gift," scrawled beside it. Emma's heart raced. What could it mean? Was there really a hidden treasure somewhere in this old house? As she stared at the map, her mind whirling with possibilities, Emma heard a noise from upstairs. It sounded like footsteps, but Sophia should have been asleep. Frowning, Emma set the diary aside and quietly made her way up the stairs. The sound seemed to be coming from Sophia's room. As Emma approached, she could hear her daughter's voice, hushed and urgent. "I can't tell her, Aunt Olivia. She'll freak out." Emma froze, her hand on the doorknob. What was Sophia hiding? I know," Sophia continued, her voice trembling. "But how am I supposed to tell my mom I'm pregnant?" The world seemed to tilt on its axis as Emma stood there, her daughter's words echoing in her ears. Pregnant? How could this be happening? Emma's mind raced back to her own youth, to the mistakes she'd made and the consequences she'd faced. She thought of the sacrifices her parents had made to support her, of the dreams she'd had to put on hold. As she stood there, torn between bursting into the room and pretending she'd never heard, Emma realized that the mystery of Margaret Sinclair's diary paled in comparison to the challenges that lay ahead. Whatever secrets the house held, they couldn't match the earth-shattering revelation she'd just overheard. With a heavy heart, Emma retreated to her bedroom, her mind swirling with questions and fears. How would they handle this? What would this mean for Sophia's future? And how could she, as a mother, guide her daughter through this life-altering event? As she lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, Emma couldn't help but wonder, in the grand tapestry of life with all its twists and turns, how did one navigate the delicate balance between uncovering the secrets of the past and facing the daunting challenges of the present? Little did Emma know, the revelations of that night were just the beginning. The old house on Beacon Hill held secrets that would shake the very foundations of her family. And the journey ahead would test her in ways she never imagined. As she finally drifted off to sleep, Emma couldn't shake the feeling that somehow everything, the move, the diary, Jack, and now Sophia's secret, was all connected in ways she had yet to understand. The next morning dawned bright and clear, but for Emma, it felt as if a heavy cloud hung over the house. She went through the motions of making breakfast, her mind still reeling from what she'd overheard the night before. When Sophia came down, yawning and tousle-haired, Emma had to fight the urge to confront her then and there. "Morning, Mom," Sophia mumbled, reaching for the orange juice. Emma studied her daughter's face, searching for any sign of the turmoil she must be feeling. But Sophia seemed normal, just a typical teenager on a typical school morning. "Sleep well?" Emma asked, trying to keep her voice casual. Sophia shrugged. "Yeah, I guess. Why?" Emma hesitated, torn between her desire to protect her daughter and her need to know the truth. But before she could say anything, there was a knock at the door. Emma opened the door to find Jack standing there, a concerned look on his face. "Hey, Emma, I hope I'm not interrupting, but I wanted to check in after yesterday. How's Sophia doing?" Emma glanced back at her daughter, who was now peering curiously at them from the kitchen. "She's better, I think. Why don't you come in for some coffee?" As Jack stepped inside, Emma couldn't help but notice how his presence seemed to fill the room. She pushed aside the flutter in her stomach, reminding herself that she had more pressing matters to deal with. "Sophia, you remember Mr. Reynolds from next door, right?" Emma said, gesturing to Jack. Sophia nodded, a hint of a smile on her face. "Yeah, thanks for yesterday, you really helped." Jack grinned, his eyes crinkling at the corners. "Any time, kiddo. High school can be tough, but trust me, it gets better." As they settled around the kitchen table, Emma found herself studying Jack's face, wondering what he would think if he knew about Sophia's situation. Would he judge them, or would he be understanding, like he had been yesterday? The conversation flowed easily, with Jack regaling them with stories about the neighborhood and its quirky residents. Emma found herself laughing for the first time in what felt like ages, the weight on her shoulders momentarily lifted. As Sophia excused herself to get ready for school, Jack leaned in closer to Emma. "Listen, I hope I'm not overstepping, but I couldn't help but notice how stressed you seem. Is everything okay?" Emma hesitated, torn between her instinct to keep her family's problems private and her desperate need to confide in someone. "It's complicated," she finally said. There's a lot going on right now." Jack nodded sympathetically. "I get it. Moving to a new place, starting over, it's not easy. But you know, sometimes it helps to talk to someone who's not directly involved. If you ever need an ear, I'm right next door." Emma felt a lump form in her throat. "Thank you, Jack. That means a lot." After Jack left and Sophia headed off to school, Emma found herself drawn once again to Margaret Sinclair's diary. She needed a distraction from her swirling thoughts about Sophia, and the mystery of the house seemed as good an escape as any. As she pored over the pages, a particular entry caught her eye. June 15th, 1952. The benefactor visited again today. He spoke of great changes coming, of a future where our work would shape the very fabric of society. But I fear the cost may be too high. The secrets we keep, the lives we touch. How can we be sure we're doing the right thing? Emma frowned, her mind racing. Who was this benefactor? And what kind of work were they involved in that could have such far-reaching consequences? She was so engrossed in the diary that she almost missed the sound of her phone ringing. Glancing at the screen, she saw it was her ex-husband, Michael. "Hello?" she answered, trying to keep the tension out of her voice. "Emma, we need to talk," Michael said, his tone serious. "It's about Sophia." Emma's heart dropped. Did he know? Had Sophia confided in him instead of her? What about Sophia? "I'm worried about her," Michael continued. "She called me last night, crying. She wouldn't tell me what was wrong, but I could tell something's not right. Is she having trouble adjusting to the move?" Emma closed her eyes, relief and guilt washing over her in equal measure. "It's been challenging," she admitted, "but we're working through it." There was a pause on the other end of the line. "Emma, I've been thinking. Maybe it would be better if Sophia came to live with me for a while. Give her a chance to finish out her senior year in familiar surroundings." The suggestion hit Emma like a physical blow. "What? No, Michael. We can't uproot her again. She's just starting to settle in here." "Is she?" Michael's voice was skeptical. "Because from where I'm sitting, it sounds like she's struggling. And frankly, Emma, I'm not sure you're equipped to handle this on your own." Emma felt a surge of anger. "On my own? I'm not the one who walked out on this family, Michael. I'm doing the best I can. And maybe your best isn't good enough right now," Michael shot back. "Look, I'm not trying to start a fight. I'm just concerned about our daughter." As they argued back and forth, Emma couldn't help but think about the secret she was keeping. If Michael knew about the pregnancy, would he fight even harder for custody? The thought made her stomach churn. Finally, they agreed to table the discussion for now, with Michael promising to visit in a few weeks to check on Sophia himself. As Emma hung up the phone, she felt drained, as if all the energy had been sucked out of her. She glanced at the clock, realizing with a start that it was almost time for her to leave for work. As she rushed to get ready, her mind was a whirlwind of conflicting thoughts and emotions. How could she focus on teaching when her own life was in such turmoil? The school day passed in a blur. Emma went through the motions, explaining symbolism in The Great Gatsby and assigning essays on the American dream, all while her own dreams for her daughter's future seemed to be crumbling around her. As the final bell rang, Emma found herself lingering in her classroom, unable to face going home just yet. She was so lost in thought that she didn't notice her colleague, Olivia Parker, enter the room. "Earth to Emma," Olivia said, waving a hand in front of her face. "You okay? You've been out of it all day." Emma managed a weak smile. "Just tired, I guess. Still adjusting to the new place." Olivia, a petite woman with a shock of red hair and a perpetual twinkle in her eye, pulled up a chair. "Honey, I've known you for 15 years. I can tell when something's eating at you. Spill. For a moment, Emma was tempted to confide in her friend. Olivia had always been her rock, the one person she could count on no matter what. But the memory of overhearing Sophia's conversation the night before held her back. If Sophia had chosen to confide in Olivia instead of her own mother, Emma didn't want to betray that trust. "It's nothing really," Emma said, forcing a brighter tone. "Just typical new house, new job stress. I'm sure it'll pass." Olivia looked skeptical but didn't push further. "Well, if you need anything, a girl's night out, a shoulder to cry on, or just someone to help you unpack those last few boxes, you know where to find me." As Emma drove home, her conversation with Olivia replayed in her mind. She hated lying to her friend, but what choice did she have? Until she figured out how to approach Sophia about what she'd overheard, she couldn't risk the secret getting out. Pulling into her driveway, Emma was surprised to see her father's car parked in front of the house. She found Thomas in the kitchen, rummaging through her cabinets. "Dad, what are you doing here?" Thomas turned, a sheepish grin on his face. "Hey, sweet pea, I thought I'd surprise you with dinner, but, it seems like your pantry is a bit bare." Emma felt a pang of guilt. Between the move, starting her new job, and now the situation with Sophia, she'd been neglecting basic things like grocery shopping. "Sorry, Dad, I've been meaning to go to the store." Thomas waved off her apology. "No worries. How about we order in? My treat." As they sat at the kitchen table waiting for their Chinese food to arrive, Emma couldn't help but notice how tired her father looked. There were new lines around his eyes, and his hands shook slightly as he sipped his water. "Dad, are you feeling okay?" she asked, concern coloring her voice. Thomas sighed, setting down his glass. "To tell you the truth, kiddo, I've been better. The doctor says my blood pressure's up, and my memory's not what it used to be." "Nothing too serious," he added quickly, seeing the worry on Emma's face. "Just the joys of getting older, I suppose." Emma reached out, covering her father's hand with her own. "Why didn't you tell me? You've got enough on your plate." "Sweet pea," Thomas said softly. "With the move and the divorce and taking care of Sophia, I didn't want to add to your worries." The irony of the situation wasn't lost on Emma. Here she was, keeping secrets from her father, while he was doing the same to protect her. When had their family become so fractured, so full of unspoken truths? As they ate their dinner, Emma found her gaze drawn to Margaret Sinclair's diary, still sitting on the counter where she'd left it that morning. The mysteries contained within its pages seemed to pale in comparison to the real-life drama unfolding around her. But as she listened to her father talk about his doctor's appointments and his struggles with living alone, Emma couldn't shake the feeling that somehow everything was connected. The secrets of the past, the challenges of the present, and the uncertain future ahead, they were all threads in the same complex tapestry. As the evening wore on and Thomas prepared to leave, Emma found herself standing in the doorway, watching her father's slow, careful progress down the front steps. She was struck by a sudden, overwhelming feeling of vulnerability. How could she hope to support Sophia through her pregnancy when she was barely keeping her own life together? But as she closed the door and turned back to face her empty house, Emma's eyes fell once again on the diary. Perhaps she thought the answers she sought weren't just in the present, but in the past as well. With renewed determination, she picked up the book, ready to uncover whatever secrets it held. As Emma settled into her favorite armchair, Margaret Sinclair's diary open on her lap. She heard the front door open. Sophia walked in, her shoulders slumped and her eyes red-rimmed. "Hey, sweetie," Emma said softly, setting the diary aside. "Rough day?" Sophia nodded, dropping her backpack on the floor. "Can we talk, Mom?" Emma's heart raced. Was this it? Was Sophia finally ready to confide in her? "Of course, honey. What's on your mind?" Sophia took a deep breath, twisting her hands nervously. I did something stupid, Mom. Really stupid." Emma steeled herself, trying to keep her expression neutral. "Whatever it is, we can work through it together." Tears welled up in Sophia's eyes. "I cheated on a test," she blurted out. "I was so stressed about falling behind in my new classes and I panicked." For a moment, Emma felt a bizarre mix of relief and disappointment. This wasn't the confession she'd been expecting, but it was still serious. "Oh, Sophia," she sighed. "What were you thinking?" As they talked through the situation, discussing the consequences and how to make things right, Emma couldn't help but feel that there was still something Sophia wasn't telling her. The pregnancy revelation hung unspoken between them, a secret too big for either of them to acknowledge. Later that night, after Sophia had gone to bed, Emma returned to the diary. As she flipped through the pages, a particular entry caught her eye. September 3rd, 1952, I fear. The benefactor's plans are more far-reaching than I ever imagined. Today, he spoke of a grand design that would span generations. But at what cost? The weight of this secret is becoming too much to bear. Emma frowned, her mind racing. What could this grand design be? And how could it possibly still be relevant today? As she pondered these questions, a soft knock at the front door startled her. Glancing at the clock, she saw it was nearly midnight. Who could be calling at this hour? Cautiously, Emma approached the door. Through the peephole, she saw Jack standing on her porch looking agitated. She opened the door, concern etched on her face. "Jack, is everything okay?" He ran a hand through his hair, looking sheepish. "I'm sorry to bother you so late, Emma. I saw your light on and I needed to talk to someone." Emma hesitated for a moment before stepping aside to let him in. As they settled in the living room, she couldn't help but notice how the lamplight softened Jack's features, highlighting the worry lines around his eyes. "What's going on, Jack?" she asked gently. He took a deep breath. "It's about this neighborhood, this street. There's something not right here. I've lived here for years, and I've seen things, heard things. And now with you moving in and asking questions about the house's history, it's all starting to come together." Emma leaned forward, intrigued. "What do you mean? What things?" Jack's eyes darted around the room as if checking for eavesdroppers. "Strange meetings late at night, people in suits coming and going at odd hours, and the previous owners of these houses, they all seem to be connected somehow. I think there's some kind of organization operating right under our noses." As Jack spoke, Emma's mind whirled. Could this be related to the benefactor mentioned in Margaret's diary? "Jack," she said slowly, "have you ever heard of someone referred to as the benefactor?" His eyes widened. "How do you know that name?" Before Emma could respond, a loud crash from upstairs made them both jump. "Sophia!" Emma gasped, leaping to her feet. They raced up the stairs, Emma's heart pounding. She burst into Sophia's room to find her daughter on the floor, clutching her stomach and moaning in pain. "Mom," Sophia whimpered. "Something's wrong. It hurts so much." Emma froze, the reality of the situation crashing down on her. This was it, the moment when pretending wasn't an option anymore. "Jack," she said, her voice surprisingly calm, "I need you to call an ambulance now." As Jack fumbled for his phone, Emma knelt beside her daughter, stroking her hair. "It's okay, sweetie. I'm here. We're going to get you help." Sophia looked up at her mother, tears streaming down her face. "I'm so sorry. Mom, I wanted to tell you, but I was so scared." "Shh, it's okay," Emma soothed, even as her own tears threatened to fall. "We'll talk about it later. Right now, we just need to make sure you're all right." The next few hours passed in a blur of sirens, emergency room lights, and terse conversations with doctors. As Emma sat in the waiting room, her head in her hands, she felt a gentle touch on her shoulder. She looked up to see Jack, holding 2 cups of terrible hospital coffee. "Any news?" he asked, handing her a cup. Emma shook her head. "They're still running tests." "God, Jack, how did I not see this coming? I'm her mother. I should have known." Jack sat down beside her, his presence oddly comforting. "Emma, you can't blame yourself. Teenagers are experts at keeping secrets. Trust me, I know. I was one once." As they sat in silence, each lost in their own thoughts, Emma's mind drifted back to the diary, to the benefactor, to Jack's cryptic warnings about the neighborhood. How could all of this be happening at once? Was it just coincidence, or was there some greater force at work? Her musings were interrupted by the arrival of Michael, his face a mask of worry and anger. "Emma, what the hell is going on? What the hell is—" "I get a call in the middle of the night saying Sophia's in the hospital." Emma stood, steeling herself for the confrontation. "Michael, calm down. Sophia's going to be okay. The doctors are with her now." "Okay? Our daughter is in the hospital, and you're telling me to calm down?" Michael's voice rose, drawing stares from others in the waiting room. "This is exactly why I said she should come live with me. You clearly can't handle—" "That's enough," Jack interrupted, stepping between them. "This isn't helping Sophia. Why don't we all take a deep breath and focus on what's important right now?" Michael glared at Jack. "And who the hell are you?" "I'm a friend," Jack said simply, "and right now your daughter needs both her parents to be there for her, not fighting each other." The tension in the air was palpable as Michael and Emma locked eyes. Years of unresolved issues and bitter arguments hung between them, but before either could speak, a doctor approached. "Mr. and Mrs. Collins," she said. "Sophia's asking for you both." As they followed the doctor down the sterile hallway, Emma felt as if she were walking in a dream. How had their lives come to this point? And more importantly, where would they go from here? Entering Sophia's room, Emma's heart clenched at the sight of her daughter looking so small and vulnerable in the hospital bed. Sophia's eyes darted between her parents, fear and guilt etched on her young face. "Mom, Dad," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I'm so sorry, I should have told you." Emma moved to one side of the bed, Michael to the other, each taking one of Sophia's hands. In that moment, their own animosity was forgotten, united in their concern for their child. "Sweetheart," Emma said gently, "we're not angry. We're just worried about you. Can you tell us what happened?" Sophia took a shaky breath. I thought I was pregnant, but the doctors say it was a false alarm. Some kind of hormonal imbalance that mimicked pregnancy symptoms. I've been so stressed lately with the move and everything." Relief washed over Emma, quickly followed by a wave of guilt. How had she missed the signs that her daughter was struggling so much? Michael squeezed Sophia's hand. "Why didn't you come to us, Pumpkin? We would have helped you through this." Tears spilled down Sophia's cheeks. "I was scared. I didn't want to disappoint you, and with everything that's happened with the divorce and the move, I just didn't want to add to the problems." As Emma listened to her daughter pour out her fears and insecurities, she realized how much they had all been keeping from each other. The secrets, the unspoken worries, the attempts to protect one another. It had all led to this moment of crisis. "Sophia," Emma said, her voice firm but gentle, "from now on, no more secrets. We're a family, no matter what. We face things together, okay?" Sophia nodded, a small smile breaking through her tears. "Okay, Mom." As the three of them sat there, talking and crying and slowly beginning to heal, Emma couldn't help but think of Margaret Sinclair's diary, still sitting on her bedside table at home. Whatever secrets the past held, whatever mysteries lurked in their new neighborhood, she knew that facing them as a united family was the only way forward. But even as she focused on comforting her daughter, a small part of Emma's mind couldn't let go of the questions that had been raised. What was the benefactor's grand design? How was it connected to their new home? And most importantly, how would uncovering these secrets impact their already fragile family dynamic? As the night wore on and Sophia finally drifted off to sleep, Emma found herself standing by the hospital room window, gazing out at the twinkling lights of Boston. She felt Michael's presence beside her, a familiar warmth despite their years apart. "We need to do better," he said softly. "For her." Emma nodded, her throat tight with emotion. "We will," she promised, both to Michael and to herself. As dawn broke over the city, casting a golden glow across the hospital room, Emma knew that this was just the beginning. The road ahead would be challenging, filled with uncomfortable truths and long-buried secrets. But as she watched her daughter sleep peacefully for the first time in weeks, Emma felt a glimmer of hope. Whatever came next, they would face it together. The following week passed in a blur of hospital visits, heart-to-heart conversations, and sleepless nights. As Sophia recovered, both physically and emotionally, Emma found herself juggling her teaching responsibilities, her daughter's needs, and the ever-present mystery of Margaret Sinclair's diary. It was on a crisp Saturday morning, as Emma sat at her kitchen table nursing a cup of coffee, that she heard a soft knock at the door. She opened it to find Jack standing there, a concerned look on his face. "Hey," he said softly. "I just wanted to check in. How's Sophia doing?" Emma managed a tired smile. "She's doing better. The doctors say she can come home tomorrow." Jack nodded, relief evident in his eyes. "That's great news, and how are you holding up?" The question, asked with such genuine care, nearly undid Emma. She felt tears prickling at the corners of her eyes. "I'm managing," she said, her voice wavering slightly. Without a word, Jack stepped forward and pulled her into a hug. Emma stiffened for a moment, surprised by the gesture, before relaxing into his embrace. It had been so long since someone had held her like this, offering comfort without expectation. As they parted, Emma felt a blush creeping up her cheeks. "I'm sorry," she mumbled. "I'm not usually this emotional." Jack's smile was warm and understanding. "You've been through a lot. It's okay to not be okay sometimes." Emma invited him in, and as they settled in the living room, she found herself opening up about everything. Her fears for Sophia, her struggles with Michael, and even the mysterious diary. "I know it sounds crazy," she said, running a hand through her hair, "but I can't shake the feeling that there's something big going on here, something connected to this house, to the neighborhood." Jack leaned forward, his expression serious. "It doesn't sound crazy at all. In fact," he hesitated, glancing around as if checking for eavesdroppers. "I've been doing some digging of my own, and I think I might have found something." Emma's heart raced. "What is it?" "There's an old community center a few blocks from here," Jack explained. "It's been abandoned for years, but I've noticed people coming and going at odd hours. I think it might be connected to whatever organization the benefactor was involved with." Emma's mind whirled with possibilities. "We should check it out," she said, surprising herself with her boldness. Jack raised an eyebrow. "Are you sure? It could be dangerous." Emma thought of Sophia, of the secrets that had nearly torn their family apart. "I'm sure," she said firmly. "I'm tired of being in the dark. Whatever's going on, I want to know the truth." That evening, after making sure Sophia was comfortable at the hospital with Michael staying overnight, Emma met Jack outside the old community center. The building loomed before them, its windows dark and its paint peeling. "Ready?" Jack asked, his voice low. Emma nodded, her heart pounding in her chest. They approached the building cautiously, looking for a way in. Jack found a side door with a rusty lock, which he managed to jimmy open with surprising skill. "Where did you learn to do that?" Emma whispered as they slipped inside. Jack's grin was barely visible in the dim light. "Misspent youth, come on, let's look around." They made their way through dusty corridors, their flashlights casting eerie shadows on the walls. Emma felt as if she had stepped into one of her beloved mystery novels, half expecting to stumble upon a secret passage or a hidden room. As they reached what appeared to be an old office, Jack suddenly grabbed Emma's arm. "Shh!" he hissed. "I hear something." Emma strained her ears, and sure enough, she could make out the faint sound of voices coming from somewhere deeper in the building. They crept forward, following the sound until they reached a closed door. Through the crack, they could see a group of people gathered around a table, their faces serious in the glow of a single lamp. Emma's breath caught in her throat as she recognized one of the figures. It was her father, Thomas. "The benefactor's legacy must be protected," a woman was saying, her voice stern. "We've worked too hard, for too many years, to let it all fall apart now." Thomas nodded, his expression grave. "I understand the importance, but my daughter, she's asking questions. She found Margaret's diary." Emma felt as if the floor had dropped out from beneath her. Her father was involved in all of this. Before she could process what she was hearing, Jack tugged on her arm. "We need to go," he whispered urgently. "Now." They made their way out of the building as quietly as they could, neither speaking until they were several blocks away. Finally, Emma turned to Jack, her mind reeling. "What just happened?" she asked, her voice shaking. "My father, he's part of this. Whatever this is." Jack ran a hand through his hair, looking as bewildered as she felt. "I don't know, Emma, but I think we've just stumbled onto something much bigger than we realized." As they walked back to Emma's house, she felt as if her world had been turned upside down. The father she thought she knew, the man who had always been her rock, was keeping secrets from her. Secrets that somehow tied into the very house she now called home. When they reached her front door, Emma hesitated. The thought of going back into that house, with all its hidden history, suddenly felt overwhelming. Jack seemed to sense her distress. "Do you want me to stay for a while?" he asked gently. Emma nodded, grateful for his presence. As they settled on her couch, she found herself reaching for Margaret's diary once again. "There has to be more here," she murmured, flipping through the pages. "Something we've missed." As Jack leaned in to look, their shoulders touching, Emma felt a spark of electricity run through her. She glanced up, meeting his eyes, and for a moment, the world seemed to stand still. The ringing of her phone shattered the moment. Emma fumbled for it, her heart racing when she saw it was Michael calling. "Hello?" she answered, trying to keep the tremor out of her voice. "Emma, you need to come to the hospital," Michael said, his tone urgent. "It's Sophia. She's gone." Emma felt as if all the air had been sucked out of the room. "What do you mean, gone?" "I went to get coffee, and when I came back, her bed was empty. The nurses haven't seen her. Emma, our daughter is missing." The world seemed to tilt on its axis as Emma struggled to process Michael's words. How could Sophia be missing? She was supposed to be safe in the hospital, recovering, protected. "I'll be right there," Emma managed to say, her voice sounding distant to her own ears. She hung up and turned to Jack, who was watching her with concern. "What's wrong?" he asked, reaching out to steady her as she swayed on her feet. "Sophia's missing," Emma said, the words feeling unreal as they left her mouth. "She's disappeared from the hospital." Jack's eyes widened. "I'll drive you," he said immediately, grabbing his keys. As they raced to the hospital, Emma's mind was a whirlwind of fear and confusion. Could Sophia's disappearance be connected to what they had just discovered at the community center? Was her daughter somehow caught up in whatever conspiracy her father was involved in? They arrived at the hospital to find it in chaos. Police officers were interviewing staff, and Michael was pacing the hallway, his face a mask of anguish. "Emma!" he called when he saw her. "Have you heard anything? Has she tried to contact you?" Emma shook her head, fighting back tears. "No, nothing. Michael, what happened?" As Michael recounted the events leading up to Sophia's disappearance, Emma felt a chill run down her spine. Something about this felt wrong, calculated. This wasn't just a teenage girl running away. "We need to tell them," she said suddenly, turning to Jack. "About what we saw, about the benefactor. It might be connected." Jack hesitated. "Are you sure? We don't know how deep this goes. It could be dangerous." Emma set her jaw, a fierce determination taking hold. "I don't care. This is my daughter we're talking about. I'll do whatever it takes to find her." As they approached the detective in charge, Emma felt as if she was standing on the edge of a precipice. Whatever came next would change everything. The secrets of Beacon Hill, the mysteries of her new home, her father's involvement, it all paled in comparison to the need to find Sophia. Taking a deep breath, Emma began to speak, unraveling the tangled web of secrets that had led them to this moment. As she talked, she could see the detective's expression change from skepticism to concern to alarm. "Mrs. Collins," he said when she finished, "I think you'd better come with me. There's something you need to see." As Emma followed the detective, with Jack and Michael close behind, she couldn't shake the feeling that they were on the verge of uncovering something that would change their lives forever. Whatever the benefactor's grand design was, whatever secrets lay hidden in the heart of Beacon Hill, Emma knew one thing for certain. She would stop at nothing to bring her daughter home. The detective led them to a small conference room where a laptop was set up. "We received this video about an hour ago," he explained, his voice grave. "I think you should see it." As he pressed play, Emma felt her heart stop. There on the screen was Sophia, looking pale and frightened, but alive. Behind her stood a figure in shadow, their face obscured. "Mom, Dad," Sophia's voice trembled. "I'm okay, but they say I can't come home until you give them what they want. They want the benefactor's legacy. Please, just do what they say. I want to come home." The video cut off abruptly, leaving the room in stunned silence. Emma turned to Michael, seeing her own fear and confusion mirrored in his eyes. Then she looked at Jack, whose expression had hardened into one of determination. "So we're going to find her," Jack said, his voice low and fierce. "Whatever it takes, we're bringing Sophia home." As the detective began outlining their next steps, Emma felt a strange mix of terror and resolve settle over her. The mystery that had begun with an old diary had now become a fight for her daughter's life. And Emma knew with absolute certainty that she would unravel every secret, face every danger, to save Sophia and bring her family back together. The game was no longer about uncovering the past. It was about securing their future, and Emma was ready to play. The next 48 hours were a blur of police interviews, frantic phone calls, and sleepless nights. Emma felt as if she were living in a waking nightmare, her mind constantly replaying the image of Sophia's frightened face in that video. It was during one of these endless nights, as Emma sat at her kitchen table poring over Margaret's diary for what felt like the 1,000th time, that she noticed something she'd overlooked before. A series of numbers, scribbled in the margin of one of the last entries. 41, 22, 13, 71, 03, Zone 9. Coordinates. Emma breathed, her heart racing. She grabbed her phone, quickly plugging the numbers into a map app. The location that popped up made her gasp. It was an old lighthouse on the outskirts of Boston, long since abandoned. Without hesitation, Emma called Jack. Despite the late hour, he answered on the second ring. "Emma, what's wrong?" "I think I know where Sophia might be," she said, her voice urgent. "Can you come over?" Within 20 minutes, Jack was at her door. Emma quickly explained her discovery, showing him the diary and the map on her phone. "We should call the police," Jack said, his brow furrowed with concern. Emma shook her head. "We don't have time. What if they don't believe us? Or worse, What if someone involved in this conspiracy intercepts the information? We have to go ourselves. Jack looked at her for a long moment, then nodded. All right, but we're not going alone. I'm calling in some backup. An hour later, Emma found herself in a car with Jack and two of his friends, a former Marine named Steve and a computer expert named Lisa. As they drove towards the lighthouse, Emma filled them in on everything that had happened. This benefactor, Lisa mused, her fingers flying over her laptop keyboard. I've been digging into some old records. It seems like they were part of some kind of secret society dating back to the early 1900s. They were obsessed with the idea of shaping the future, of creating a perfect society. But what does that have to do with Sophia? Emma asked, her voice tight with worry. I'm not sure, Lisa admitted. But from what I can gather, they believed in something they called legacy children, descendants who would carry on their work. Maybe they think Sophia is one of these children. The thought sent a chill down Emma's spine. As they approached the lighthouse, she could see lights flickering in the windows. They were definitely not alone. Steve, taking charge with his military experience, outlined a plan. Lisa, you stay here and monitor communications. Jack and I will approach from the sides. Emma, you come in the front. They'll be expecting you. Emma's heart pounded as she walked up to the lighthouse door. Taking a deep breath, she knocked firmly. The door creaked open, revealing a face she recognized from the community center meeting, the stern-looking woman who had been speaking to her father. Mrs. Collins, she said, her voice cold. We've been expecting you. Emma was led into a large room, dimly lit by old lamps. Her breath caught in her throat when she saw Sophia, unharmed but clearly frightened, sitting in a chair across the room. Thomas stood nearby, his face a mask of anguish. Dad, Emma gasped. What's going on? Thomas stepped forward, his eyes pleading. I'm so sorry, Emma. I never meant for any of this to happen. I was just trying to protect you, to protect our family's legacy. The stern woman spoke up. Your father has been a valuable member of our organization for years, Mrs. Collins, as was your mother and her mother before her. The benefactor's vision has guided us for generations. Emma's mind reeled. What vision? What are you talking about? A better world, the woman said, her eyes gleaming with fervor. A world shaped by those with the wisdom and foresight to guide humanity towards its true potential. Your daughter is key to this future. You're insane, Emma spat. Let my daughter go. Now. Just then, a commotion erupted outside. Jack and Steve had made their move, creating a distraction. In the chaos that followed, Emma lunged for Sophia, grabbing her hand and pulling her towards the door. Stop them, the woman shouted, but Thomas moved to block the others, giving Emma and Sophia the chance they needed to escape. They ran out of the lighthouse and down the rocky path, the sound of shouting and footsteps close behind them. As they reached the car, Lisa was already starting the engine. Go, go, go! Emma yelled as they piled in. As they sped away, Emma held Sophia close, tears of relief streaming down her face. In the rearview mirror, she could see the lighthouse growing smaller, the figures of her father and the others fading into the distance. The next few days were a whirlwind of police statements, emotional reunions, and difficult conversations. The authorities launched a full investigation into the secret society, uncovering decades of manipulation and hidden influence. Thomas, facing the consequences of his involvement, decided to cooperate fully with the investigation. In a tear-filled conversation with Emma, he explained how he had been drawn into the organization, believing he was part of something greater, something that would ensure a better future for his family. I was wrong, he said, his voice heavy with regret. I see that now. I hope someday you can forgive me. As the dust began to settle, Emma found herself sitting on her porch with Jack, watching the sun set over Beacon Hill. Sophia was inside, was safe and sound, talking on the phone with Michael, who had been frantic with worry during the whole ordeal. So, Jack said, breaking the comfortable silence, what happens now? Emma sighed, leaning back in her chair. Now, we heal. We move forward. There's still so much to process, so much to understand about all of this. Jack nodded, reaching out to take her hand. Whatever comes next, you don't have to face it alone. Emma smiled, feeling a warmth spread through her chest. I know, she said softly. In the weeks that followed, life slowly began to return to a new kind of normal. The house on Beacon Hill, once filled with secrets and shadows, now felt like a true home. Emma, Sophia, and even Michael found themselves growing closer, the shared ordeal having rekindled a sense of family they had thought lost. One sunny afternoon, as Emma was cleaning out the attic, she came across a small, ornate box she had never noticed before. Inside, she found a letter addressed to her, written in her mother's handwriting. With trembling hands, she unfolded the paper and began to read, "My dearest Emma, if you're reading this, it means you've discovered the truth about our family's history. I'm so sorry for the burden this knowledge brings. I wanted to protect you from it, to give you a chance at a normal life. But I also know that you are strong, stronger than I ever was. You have the power to break the cycle, to choose your own path. The benefactor's legacy is not about secret societies or grand designs. It's about the choices we make every day, the love we show to those around us, and the courage to stand up for what's right. You've always been my greatest legacy, Emma, not because of any predetermined destiny, but because of the wonderful, compassionate person you've become. I love you, always, Mom." As Emma finished reading, tears streaming down her face, she felt as if a weight had been lifted from her shoulders. She understood now that the real mystery she had been unraveling wasn't about hidden treasures or ancient conspiracies. It was about family, about love, and about the power of truth to heal even the deepest wounds. She made her way downstairs, where Sophia was curled up on the couch reading a book. Jack was in the kitchen attempting to cook dinner, with questionable success judging by the smell. Thomas sat in the armchair, his face lined with age and regret, but his eyes warm as he watched his granddaughter. Emma looked at this tableau, her family, broken and healing, imperfect but together, and felt a surge of love so strong it nearly overwhelmed her. "Hey," she said, drawing their attention, "I think I found something you all need to see." As she shared her mother's letter with them, Emma realized that this was the real treasure of Beacon Hill, not the secrets hidden in its walls, but the love and forgiveness that could flourish within them. The mystery that had begun with an old diary had led them on a journey none of them could have anticipated. But as they sat together sharing stories and laughter, Emma knew that the greatest adventure was still to come. It was the adventure of moving forward, of building a future unburdened by the shadows of the past. As night fell over Beacon Hill, the old house stood quiet and peaceful. Its secrets had been revealed, its ghosts laid to rest, and within its walls a family slept soundly, their bonds stronger than ever, ready to face whatever the future might bring. Emma drifted off to sleep, Margaret Sinclair's diary on her bedside table, but its mysteries no longer called to her. She had found a far greater story, her own, and it was a story still being written, full of hope, love, and the promise of new beginnings.